Why does Nevada own almost none of Nevada? Now, you might think that statement makes no sense, but let me explain. Did you know that the people of Nevada only have access to barely a fifth of their own state? And Nevada isn't alone. In fact, there are 5 western states which control less than half of the land within their borders. So what exactly is going on in places like Nevada, Oregon, Alaska, Idaho, and Utah? And if these states don't actually control a majority of the land within their borders, then who does? Well, the federal government does. In fact, more than 80% of all the land in Nevada is owned by the feds. And the federal land is broken down by the Department of Defense, the National Park Service, the Fish and Wildlife Service, the Forest Service, and the Bureau of Land Management. Some of these agencies are well known or even popular. Others are so obscure that unless you're living in Alaska, there's a good chance you may have never heard of them. And yet, collectively, these departments and 4 agencies own over 1/4 of the entire land in the United States. The question is, why does Congress need all of this? I mean, why don't they just sell it off or return it back to the states? And the simple answer is, there aren't enough votes to do so. But the reason why may be surprising. That's because the people stopping Nevadans from reclaiming the land within their own state typically live on the other side of the country. For decades, politicians from mostly eastern states have routinely prevented attempts to sell off federal lands in western states. That's because in places like Connecticut or Rhode Island, federal land ownership is minuscule, and politicians from these states tend to think of popular concepts like Yellowstone National Park or the Great Smoky Mountains when the topic is brought up. But when Nevadans think of federal lands, they think of the Nevada National Security Site, where the federal government detonated nearly 1,000 nuclear weapons from 1951 to 1992. The crazy part is, some of these tests were so close to Las Vegas that you could actually see mushroom clouds from downtown. And federal meddling in Nevada didn't end in the 90s. In fact, Washington, D.C. even went so far as to draw up plans to designate one mountain in Nevada as a nationwide repository for nuclear waste. So, what mechanisms does Nevada have to stop the federal government from dropping nuclear bombs on the state or using it as one giant dumping ground? Well, outside of the state's 2 senators and 3 representatives in Congress, there really isn't much. Because as much as the signs may say, "Welcome to Nevada," when tourists and travelers cross into the state, there's very little of Nevada that's actually owned by Nevadans, because the political elite in DC won't let them. But this begs the question, why shouldn't Nevadans be able to decide what happens within their state? They should be able to. But until the federal government finally begins selling off the more than 600 million acres it owns across much of Western America, the people of states like Nevada, Idaho, Alaska, Oregon, and Utah will continue to be at the mercy of politicians halfway across the country.